away. Water bottles can go on the book center table. You do not need your water bottle on the table while you're doing it. All book bags away, Zaire, or they can get ruined. Put it in the closet. No, you sit at your regular seat. All stuff off your desks. All book bags in the closet. Let's go. Jaden, you need you to clear this desk off. Let's go. Clear it off, please. Sorry. Is it?
That's my final project because I recorded myself teaching.
Oh, okay.
Is that alright?
Yeah, that's fine. Turn around this way, please.
You guys know how is everyone doing?
Good.
So, unless you guys remember me now, but I'm Mr. John. I'm here to teach you guys. Oops. So, how many of you guys have ever heard of oobleck or made oobleck before? Does anyone know what it is? That's a great fun time now. Okay. So, do you guys know, have you guys ever heard of like solids or liquids or stuff like that? Okay, so first, let's talk about things that we think of when we think of solids. So, before anything else, let me pass out the name tags. So when I say your name, please just raise your hand, okay? Juria?
She's absent.
Bashir? Komet? Rakia?
Rakaya.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kai. Zakir? Orion? Samia? Keziah? Natasha? Bazil?
Basil's absent.
What did you say?
He's absent.
Okay. Indira? Sajia?
Nijai.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jaya. I'm really bad with names, guys. I'm really sorry.
No, that's all right. It takes me a while to get them. I call them by their last name sometimes.
Isaiah? Zaire? Jason? Kwame? Mackenzie?
Absent.
Sabina? Cache? Zakwa? Kayla? Thank you. And Jean.
Cache, I'm going to ask you to come up and sit with Orion and Jaden today. Cache,
And does everyone have a name tag? Did I forget anyone?
put your name tag with you and go sit up there, please.
So now that I kind of know all your guys' names, we're going to be talking a little bit about what we think of when we think about solids, what we think about liquids, okay? So who here can tell me something that they think of when they think of solid? Like describe all solids. Raise your hand. How's it called? Ice. Okay, so not just ice, but what makes ice a solid? Like, is it hard? Is it soft? Is it okay? So solids are hard, right? Does anyone else have any ideas? Sabina?
They stay in one shape all the time.
Good job. Did anyone else think of any? Matt?
Well, how about rock?
What do you think?
Well,
What makes a rock a solid, though?
it's hard. It will be like that. And also, but rock is really big and can fly and hit.
Okay, so like if solids get hit, they're really hard, solids tend to be bigger, and like if they're hit, they break into smaller solids. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Isaiah, turn around, please.
So since we already talked a little bit about solids, let's move on to liquids. So we already talked about how solids are hard, they stay in one shape, and when they're broken, they're still a solid. So how about liquids? What do we think of when we think about liquids? Alright. What makes a juice a liquid, though? Like, is juice hard? Does it stay in one shape? Like, what makes juice a liquid? If you don't know, I can come back to you. Isaiah.
Sugar?
Sugar is not a liquid. Why do you think sugar is a liquid? sugar is put in the juice.
It's not even funny.
Let's see. Je crois. Okay, so like if you pour, like if I have like a big picture of water and I pour it into like a vase, the water takes the shape of the vase, not the picture, right? Okay, so it doesn't stay in one shape. Anyone else think about anything with liquids? Come back.
Glue,
Okay, so why is glue a liquid?
because it's like water, but you can mix, but you can put it in, like, what, it's like a solid, but it doesn't take its shape. It can make it, you can make it in any shape.
So like you said, like so what I'm saying, it changes the shapes with the container that it's in?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like the big thing with liquids. So now we talk a little bit about liquids. We're going to talk about oobleck. And oobleck is really cool. So this is one of my favorite lessons I taught. I learned about it when I was in high school, and it still blows my mind to this day. So I need somebody to be my assistant just to get their advice on something. Someone that I haven't called. If I've called on you, lower your hand. Make sure I can see your name tags too, because I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn your names. Let's see. Samia. So this right here is oobleck. I love making this stuff. So I want you to feel it, and I want you to try to like say, is it like a solid, is it a liquid, what does it feel like? You guys need to make this after she talks about it, okay? So just try to hold on to it, and just play it in. Play it inside the bag. So is it gooey, is it super hard? Like if you squeeze it, is it hard? If you just let it sit in your hand, like, is it hard? So she's like, she said it was hard. So now, like, just let it sit in your hand. So like, we think so, since solids are hard, it's probably a solid, right? Does it take a shape of whatever your hand is? So it also doesn't stay in one shape. So what we're talking about is oobleck a solid or is it a liquid? We're going to get to that. I'm going to let you guys make the oobleck first. So I want everybody to clear out their desks. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be passing out newspapers to each table, and I just want you to cover your desk because it's kind of messy, okay? Just open up the newspapers and try to cover your desk as much as you can.
As well, please. Black here, can you come sit by Cache, please? Sorry.
Here you guys go.
Black here, this side.
Yes, Jason? Do you want more newspapers?
Samina, can you sit back and
Does anyone have enough newspaper or did I need more? I want your guys' entire desks covered. Okay, so now I need one person from each group. Raise your hand, get the supplies. So Zakir, come up and get the supplies. Komet, and don't open up the bag yet. Let's see, Keziah. Isaiah. And Sabina. So does every table have a bag of supplies? Or is every table going to get a bag of supplies? So once you guys are all sitting at your desks, I want somebody from each group to open up the bag and see what's inside. So we should see a few marbles and a paper clip maybe, and that's in its own bag. We should see this little white powder stuff. This is called cornstarch. A lot of people use it with baking. And then we should see this little bottle of water. So does everybody see that? Does everybody have all those three things in their bag?
Yes.
Yes, Matt?
I don't have any water. I don't have any water.
You can take mine.
How am I slow?
So now what I want you guys to do is we're going to open up this bag, and you need one person from the group to open the bag and hold it. And hold it right in the middle so the entire group can see it. And I want somebody else to open up the bottle of water. And I want, when everybody has the bottle of water open, to pour it in the little bag. So we're mixing the cornstarch and the water, okay? And after that,
This one thing will have trouble with.
excuse me, else? So I have the bottle of cornstarch open. Does somebody else want to pour it? Here you go. And now what we just do is make sure the bag's completely closed. You should hear like little clicking sounds. And then I want you to start mixing it, okay? And you should feel it start to harden up in your hands, but also like if you just let it sit in your hands, it kind of goes all liquidy and gooey. But if you squeeze it super hard, then it should turn into like a little bit of a solid, if that makes sense. So you have to start mixing it up. Does anybody want a spoon to help them mix it? It can help. Raise your hand if you want a spoon. That's for like after they do it, so that way they can like see how it's mixed in. I want you guys to take turns mixing it and pass around the bag and talk about what you think it feels like. And while you guys do that, I'm going to be passing out worksheets for you.
Why did you put your hand in it?
And make sure not to get this near your face. It won't kill you, but it's not tasting good. So if anyone has any questions or like you think that it's not acting right, because it should be kind of both like a solid and a liquid. So if it doesn't feel like that, raise your hand and I'll help you guys, okay? Don't touch it yet. Yeah, you can just use it to mix it. Or you can use it to mix it outside the bag, it's up to you. As long as you mix it well, that's all that matters. Yes, ma'am? What do you say? Your bag's open? Where's it all? Okay, just what we're gonna do is you're just gonna mix. You're gonna keep it in this bag, but you're just gonna put this bag inside of this bag, okay? So that way, in case it spills out, you have a backup. So is anyone having any trouble mixing it or anything? That means you made it right. So guys, now you mix it a little bit. Can I see each person has their bag folded up. I have to make sure you guys have it right, okay? This is really good. Good job. Because it should be kind of like solid when you squeeze it super hard, and then if you just let it sit in your hands. Good job. So keep holding up the bag. Good job. Good job. Can you see your bag? Good job. So good job, all you guys made it right. So now what we're gonna do is, do you remember like the little baggie with the paper clips and like the marbles? Can I borrow some of these marbles? I'll give it right back. So first, right here, I just have some plain old tap water that I took out of the sink this morning. I'm gonna put the marble in. I want you guys to try to see how fast it sinks. So you ready? Can everyone see? Ready? Is everyone looking at me? So that just went straight to the bottom, right? Now I want you guys to take your marble. I want to try to get for you guys to put it in the oobleck. I want to see, does it fall faster? Does it fall slower? Does it just stay on top? What happens? And while you guys are doing this, you see the form on the left that looks like this? Do you guys see this little page right here? Let's, while you guys are messing with the oobleck, I want you guys to write on this, like, why do you think oobleck may be a solid? Because you know it's hard when you squeeze it, or why do you think it's a liquid? Or, like, what happens when you do something to oobleck? Like, I want you guys to talk about oobleck and what you think it does. Does that make sense, everyone? So now play with the marbles. Put the paper clips in if you guys have paper clips. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand, okay? Yeah, I see it. The paper clip, you can put the paper clip in there too. It's just different things that you can put in there to see. What do you say? It does work out, though, doesn't it? Yes, sir, Mr. Plummer? So, okay, this is like oobleck? Kind of like a solid, kind of like a liquid, right? So what makes you think that oobleck's a solid? Okay. So evidence that oobleck is a solid when you feel it, it feels right. What makes you think oobleck's a liquid? Basically what we're doing is seeing when we look at oobleck, and we're saying why we think it's a solid, why we think it's a liquid, why we think it's both. So that's what we're going to do. Okay? So is that You need to write down properties of why you think it's both a solid and a liquid.
Oh!
So now you guys have played with the oobleck for a little bit and started to fill out the sheet. Let's talk about when you play with the oobleck, what does it feel like? So we talked about the properties of solid. We talked about the properties of liquids. What do we think oobleck feels like? So raise your hand if you can tell me something that you noticed about oobleck when you were playing with it.
I know a lot of things I noticed. It's a mix of milk, baby powder, a full rubber ball, iron nail, dust, rabbit, uniform, ice, and nothing less.
So Matt, first raise your hand, just so you know for next time. And second, it's only, I don't think that's right, because it's a mix of water and cornstarch. It might feel like that, but it might not be that, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So raise your hand. Can anybody tell me something that they thought about what oobleck felt like, or what you think it might be? Just stuff that you thought about oobleck. Sabina?
It felt like water and baby powder.
It felt like water and baking powder?
Yeah, but it wasn't mixed very well.
Okay. How about, can you ask your name? Is that Samia? Okay, what do you think?
It felt like,
What do you say?
pancake mix.
Kind of like pancake mix? Does pancake mix get harder when you push it? Okay. So maybe there's something similar between the pancake mix and the oobleck. Okay. Anybody else have any ideas? Okay, we'll come back to this later. Now I want to see what you guys both think. So I want you guys to tell me, do you think it's a solid or do you think it's a liquid? So I want you to raise your hand if you think it's a solid. Who here thinks that oobleck is a solid? Raise your hand high. Are you raising your hand, Jaden? Or no? Okay. So raise your hand if you think it's a solid and count you guys up. So ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 votes that it's a solid. Who here thinks it's a liquid? Raise your hand.
Oh.
And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 votes that's a liquid. Yeah, okay? Okay, we'll get to that. So, like we talked about, oobleck kind of feels like both, right? It's hard when you squeeze it, but then when you just like let it sit in your hand, it kind of like melts your hand, right? Let's talk about some vocabulary. Oh, actually, first let's do this. So these are all things, you guys have a worksheet of this, so we're going to do it as a class, okay? So we're going to go straight down the list. It's the same list that you guys have. I just put it on a poster. So if you think it's a solid, raise your hand. And I'm going to say each one of these individually. So is a rock a solid? Raise your hand if you think it is. Are rocks solids? Okay, good job, guys. Is a rubber band a solid? Why don't you guys think a rubber band is a solid? Zaire, why didn't you say rubber band is a solid? But isn't your pillow soft? So is the pillow a liquid then? Okay, so like Zaire said, it'll stay in one place. You can't basically take a rubber band and like even though you can change its shape a little bit, a rubber band if you put it on the scale is always going to stay the same general shape as a rubber band. Like, it's not like you can't with water. It'll fill absolutely anything you put it in to the exact shape. If you put a ton of rubber bands in like a little jar, it will fill the shape, but you'll still have a lot of gaps where the air can go. Whereas if you pour that water in that jar, you won't necessarily have those gaps. So I'm going to ask again. Who here thinks that rubber bands are solid? Raise your hand. Raise your hand high. Good job. Is milk a solid?
No.
Now, why is milk a solid? Raise your hand and tell me. I have to see someone that I haven't called on. Latasha, do you know why milk is not a solid? Give me a good guess. Let's look at the properties that we have with solids and the properties that we have with liquids. Does any of them fit milk? Do you have any idea or no? Okay. Najia. Najai, I'm sorry.
It doesn't stay in one shape.
Okay. So since milk doesn't stay in one shape, we think it's a liquid? Good job. Now we go with feathers. Are feathers solids or are they liquids? I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. Isaiah, you raising your hand or no? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. Kai, do you know? Give me a guess. Do you think a feather is a solid or do you think it's a liquid? How did you really think about it? Good job. Because feathers, when they're broken, they still stay a solid. If you can't break a liquid, they stay in their one shape. And feathers are relatively hard compared to like water and stuff. Yeah, Isaiah?
Cloth is a liquid.
Cloth? Why do you think cloth's a liquid?
Oh wait, no, it's a solid.
Okay, well, why do you think it's a solid then?
Because it's soft.
Okay, so it's soft. Let's see. Does it stay in one shape? Like if you rip it, is it still the same thing?
Yeah.
If you rip two pieces of cloth in half, like if I were to tear my shirt in half, if I tore my shirt in half right now, I wouldn't have two halves of the same shirt. What would I have then? It'd still be the same shirt, wouldn't it? It would just be a broken shirt. So it's still the same material that it's made of, it's still like a cotton shirt, no matter what. Okay. So that's the property of a solid. So you think cloth is solid? Raise your hand if you agree with Isaiah. Raise your hand if you disagree with Isaiah. Good job. I'm not seeing everyone raise their hand. Let's see. This one's a tough one. Baby powder. Jason, you haven't answered yet.
Liquid.
Why do you think baby powder is a liquid?
Because baby powder stays. Baby powder doesn't stay in one shape.
See, that one was a tough one. I'm sorry. You want to rethink that? Or is baby powder just a liquid, or is it a ton of really, really small solids all together?
The small solids.
I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. So Jason, what do you say?
Small solids.
Good job. Because like if you were to use like baby powder, because you know like you're sweating and you want to like soak up some of the moisture, when you squeeze a little bottle, if you look really carefully, you see a bunch of little flecks, and those little flecks are all solid. So even though it doesn't stay in one shape, if you were to look at it super, super close, it's hard. Each of those little flecks stays in one shape, and if you were to break those little flecks, it would still be a solid. Let's see. Sugar. I think somebody said earlier it was a liquid. Do you guys agree with that, or do you guys think it's a solid, or?
Solid.
I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. Ryan? Okay, good job. Why do you think it's a solid? You're right, I'll tell you that. Good job. We might add sugar to things like coffee or tea or juice, and the juice or coffee or tea might be a liquid, but the sugar itself is still solid.
Milk.
Milk is a liquid. Because we're checking things that are only solids, okay? That's what I'm trying to mess up. Okay, so a foam rubber ball. Lexi, do you want to answer that one? You think it's solid or liquid? Okay, why is it a solid?
It doesn't stay in one side.
Okay, well if it doesn't stay in one...
It stays in one shape.
Okay, so if it stays in one shape, that's probably a solid. You said it doesn't stay in one shape? Well, that's probably a liquid, isn't it? So wouldn't a foam rubber ball be a liquid then? Why do you think it's a solid? Why do you think it's a solid? Is it, let's see, if you break the foam rubber ball in half, do you still have two halves of the same foam rubber ball?
Yes.
And like, let's say, we all think water is a liquid, right? Can you break water in half really? Unless it's ice? Okay, so since you can't break that, that's a liquid. So since you can break a rubber ball, it's a solid. Let's see. Styrofoam, the things you used to like, when you like order something, you know, you have the styrofoam peanuts. What do you think that is? When you flick it off, it gets those little circular dots. The hands that I see have answered a lot, so if you haven't answered a lot, let me see. If I don't see some new hands, I'm gonna start picking on people randomly. It's okay if you get it wrong. We can talk about it together. Which key do you have a guess? Yeah, 50-50 shot. If you break styrofoam in half, do you still have styrofoam? Good job. So like you said, if you break a styrofoam piece in half, if this was made out of styrofoam, if you were to break it in half, you'd still have two halves of the same styrofoam. You could put the two pieces together and it would still look like the same shape. It's hard, because if you knock on it, you can hear like a little sound, and it stays in one shape. So styrofoam is a solid. So air, the stuff that we breathe, in and out, every single day, all day. What do we think that is? Is it a solid? I can't hear you unless you're using that. Alright. Can we break air?
What is liquid?
You want to try to guess again?
It's a solid.
Air isn't necessarily a solid or a liquid, it's something we call a gas, but we'll talk about that in future years. So basically, air is something, we can't necessarily see it, we know it's there. So it's kind of like a weird question because it's not either one of the choices that I've taught you guys, but I'm not going to teach you guys what a gas is yet. So let's see, flour. Flour is that really small substance like the baby powder, like the cornstarch. So since we already talked about stuff similar to that, what do we think that flour is? I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. Gia? Or no, try it. You know, right. You think the flour is solid? Good job. Why do you think it's solid? You're right.
Because it has
Small little pieces? And if you break the small little pieces, you still have smaller little pieces, right?
Yes.
So no matter what, if you break it, you know, if you blow into the air, it's still going to be little flour particles and little flour pieces all over. Dust. Dust is a toughie too. See, I want to see hands that I haven't seen yet. These hands I've seen. If you already answered a question, lower your hand. Palmer, I know you've answered questions, and Zaire, so have you. If you haven't answered a question, lower your hand. Samia, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so Samia, what's dust? Okay, so why do you think it's a solid? Can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. The little pieces? Okay, so like she said, solids are dust. Or dust is a solid, I'm sorry. Cooking oil, the stuff that you see like your parents put in like a frying pan when they're making like an egg for breakfast in the morning, or just like stuff that you see in that little bottle that you pour out. I've seen these hands. Vijaya?
Liquid.
Liquid? Okay, why is it a liquid?
Because, like, it doesn't stay in the shape.
Okay, good job. So it's not a solid, so we're not going to check it. So, sponge. What's your name? I'm sorry, I can't see your name. Kazai, I'm sorry. So what do you think a sponge is? Why is it a sponge? Why is it a solid? Because I mean, like, if you squeeze it really tight, doesn't it fit in a vase? I'll give you a hint. You're right. But I'm trying to make it tough for you. Good job. How about an iron nail? Like if you know, if your dad's trying to build something, or if you're making like a doghouse. I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. I've seen a lot of these hands. Ryan, do you know? Yeah, 50-50 shot. If you break a nail in half, is it still a nail? Are nails hard? So, based on like the properties that we said, the properties we already said, do you think a nail is a solid or do you think it's a liquid? Good job. How about pikes? Cache? Now why is it a solid? Because isn't water a liquid? So then why is ice a solid if ice is made out of water? You're right. But I'm trying to make you think. What do you say? Okay, so are all cold things solids then? Does a solid have to be cold? Okay. So like so since it's cold, it freezes and then it turns into a solid. Because if you break it, it's still ice, right? Good job. And ice tends to be harder. It stays in its one shape, like how you freeze it. And when it's broken, it's still Ice. Let's see. Wood. You can't use nails without using wood. Bashir.
Solid.
Good job. And I know we've talked about this a million times, and then I always said it over and over, but why do you think it's a solid? Good job. Even if I cut it, will it still stay one shape? Oh, if I put those two halves together, will it still be that one same shape? So it's a solid. Let's see. Soil, or like dirt, the stuff that we find in the ground. You don't have this. I have to make sure I'm not running on that. Isaiah, do you think dirt is a solid or do you think it's a liquid?
Solid.
Okay, why is it a solid? You're right.
Because it's
Look at the properties, they might help you out.
I forgot.
Okay, well, do you want to give a guess? Look at the properties and see if you can, since you said it was a solid, the solid's right. A solid has to be within some of these properties. So talk to me about when you feel dirt, like what do you feel? Let's see.
Because it's so mushy.
So are solids mushy? Like, are they like little flecks of dirt? And that's why so it's kind of like the flour, it's kind of like the baby powder we were talking about? So that's why it's solid? Good job. This is a toughie. Melting wax. Jason, I don't think you've answered, have you?
Yeah, I did answer.
Paul, you've answered a few times, haven't you?
I only answered once.
Jason, you go.
I think melting wax is a liquid.
Hey, good job. Why?
Because it's like water.
Okay. So it's a little bit thicker than water, but I mean, like, if I were to melt a candle like with all the wax in, I would pour it in like a little cup. It would fill the shape of that cup, right? There wouldn't be any air holes, or it would take the shape of the cup, right? Anyone else have anything why they think that melting wax would be a liquid? It's fine if you guys don't. I'm just trying to see what you guys think. Did you raise your hand? It's fine if you take a guess and you're wrong.
That's why it's a liquid.
But why do you think it's a liquid? Tell me some things that all and most liquids do. Do you want to come back to you for this one? Okay. So, we said melting wax was a liquid. How about the salt? Salt, those really tiny things that make your food taste really good, but really unhealthy. Matt, do you want to try to answer? I haven't heard from you in a while. Do you think that salt is solid or liquid? What do you say? No, salt. What do you think salt is? Okay, why do you think it's a solid? You're right. Okay. So salt is kind of like those ones that we talked about with soil or baby powder and stuff like that. That you'll have a bunch of tiny little specks, but even if you break those tiny little specks in half, they'll still be solids, and it's still going to be salt no matter what. So let's do the last one, cotton ball. I'm sorry, I can't see your name tag. Design. That's what I thought. I want to get it on though. Okay. Now, why is a cotton a solid ball? We've talked about this a lot of times, but I promise this is the last one. Why do you think it's a solid? Okay. So even if you squeeze it tiny, it'll stay in that little cotton ball shape. It just might be a little bit smaller, but it's still a cotton ball, right? So this is the worksheet that you guys had on your front desk. I want you guys to make sure you have it done. These are all the right answers, so just make sure you have all the right checks. You don't have that one? Does everyone have the worksheet? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you didn't have it. Oh, you do? So make sure that everything's answered. And while you guys are you going to do that, if you already did the lesson, we can talk about some of the vocab. And if you already described both of these, a lot of you guys will know these words and be able to venture a guess. So let's see. down so it's not as easy on you guys. Talk to me about what you guys think a solid is. We went over this a bunch of times in the last handout. So based on like what we said and what on the worksheet was a solid, what can we say about solids and what's a good definition for solids? Raise your hand if you know. We just went over it just with this. So like all these things that are checkmarked are solids. So what do all these things have in common? Not you.
Stay in one shape.
Okay, so they stay in one shape. So what's the other thing that written down? I can't hear you unless your hand's raised. The giant?
They're hard.
Okay. So all solids are relatively hard compared to liquids. Actually, what were you saying?
Broken instead of sun.
How about liquids? So we talked about liquids over there too. All these things that are not checked are liquids. So what do all the things that aren't checked? I know there's only a few have in common. The claw you've answered a while. So liquids don't stay in one shape? So if liquids don't stay in one shape, what shape do they take? Like, are they just like always randomly changing shape? Like if you pour a bottle of water into your mouth, like is it always changing shape, or like does it take the shape of the bottle? Like what shape do liquids stay in if they don't stay in one shape? What do you say? Yeah, so like wherever you pour it, it's gonna take the shape of whatever you poured in, right? And if you guys want to write this down, this would be really helpful. It's not on the handout or anything, but it's just something good to know. And I know we didn't go over this word, but has anyone ever heard of the word viscosity, or what they think viscosity might mean? And it's okay if you don't know and you just want to give a guess. If we have like a viscous fluid or like a viscous liquid, what do we think viscosity means? Does anyone know? It's fine if you guess. It's like, I think I saw your hand. Do you have any guesses? What do you say? It's called viscosity. Do you have any idea? Okay. The quality you want to try?
Real bad.
What's that?
Real bad.
Real bad?
Real bad.
I don't
Real bad.
I don't think so, I'm sorry. So does anybody have any other guesses? I'll give you a hint. A lot of the things that we mess with, like when we pour the water in, the water is viscous. Oh, what do you think it is like here? No, not exactly. Anyone else have any guesses? What do you say? Adventure? Oh no, it's not an invention. Let's see. Well, you guys think about it for like 30 more seconds, and if you guys can't figure it out. What do you say? Close. You use it to make something. So, something if we, Patrick, do you have one more guess? Not exactly, I'm sorry. So viscosity is kind of like when you pour something, it has the ability to pour. Or like when you pour something, like you can't really easily pour. If I were to take a pitcher and I were to fill it with dirt, it wouldn't really pour easily. Like whereas if I were to fill out the same pitcher with water, the water flows out really nice, so it's the ability to have something to be able to be poured. And it's the property of being able to pour something. So this one's really tough. I don't think, if any of you guys know this, I'll be super impressed, because I didn't know this until I started the lesson. Anyone know what a non-Newtonian fluid is? I'll give you a hint. Oobleck's a non-Newtonian fluid. Oobleck is a non-Newtonian fluid.
Solid.
I can't hear you unless you raise your hand. Good Jaya?
Solid.
Is oobleck a solid? But I thought it wrote my hand. Because we already talked about solids. How about you, Samia?
Okay.
Okay, so it's kind of like a solid, kind of like a liquid? Good job. So non-Newtonian fluid is something that has both the properties or like abilities or things that are both that of a solid and a liquid. So it's kind of like a solid, kind of like a liquid. If you think, do you guys eat ketchup a lot with your like chicken nuggets? If you put ketchup upside down, then it doesn't necessarily flow out. You kind of have to squeeze it first. So it kind of is like a solid, kind of like a liquid. And then the last word is pressure. So have you guys ever been under pressure, or like, does anyone know what pressure is, or like, have your parents ever put pressure on you to do well in school? Does anyone have any idea? Sabina, I haven't heard from you in a while.
I think like pressure is like something. I've heard of pressure because like when you put pressure on something, like pressure makes things burst.
Okay, so like, show me how you put pressure on the bag of oobleck. Like, demonstrate it for me. Okay, so like if you're like squeezing it, or if you're trying to make it like smaller, trying to condense it, you're putting it under pressure, right? That's really good. So that's what pressure is. What were you gonna say about you? That's a different kind of pressure. It's along those same lines. You know, like if somebody tries to like push you down or like try to like really motivate you to do something really hard, that's also putting you under pressure. That's a different kind of pressure, but it's kind of like the same feeling. You feel like somebody's pushing down on you. So like if you push down on something. And now, since we talked about these words, does anybody have any idea, like anything they want to add to these words, or any changes they want to add? Okay, I think these are pretty good definitions. But what I want you to do, like I said, I'm going to take these down. And for your group's exit card, you guys know what exit cards are, right? We talked about that last time. That's what you guys turned in at the very end, where I said write down an example of a variable that you do in the last experiment. Do you remember that? So I want somebody from each group to take out a piece of paper, and take out one piece of paper, and I want you guys to write down let's see, one property they can think of a solid, and one example of a solid, and then one property they can think of a liquid, and then one example of a liquid. So I want you guys to write that all down, okay? So I want one person from each group to take out a piece of paper. I'll do this stuff. Just right on the back of this. I want each group, I want you guys to write your name on it, and write down one property of a solid, and one property of a liquid, and then write down one example of a solid, and one example of a liquid. Raise your hand if your group doesn't have a piece of paper. And make sure to write your name on write everyone's name in the group on a piece of paper. And if you guys need help, raise your hand. And you can talk about it within your group because you're doing one property for the entire group. So. You just write down one example of a solid, one example of a liquid. So like, you fill out this form because this is all about the oobleck. But on the group page, I gave you guys a group page to write down your answer on, right? Or did I not? Okay, so no, you're gonna write on the back, right? So I'm gonna write down one example with what like one property of a solid, like we had talked about. No, one property, like what makes all solids solids. And then I want you guys to write down an example of a solid, like you said ice, and then do the same thing for liquid, okay? Make sure you write down an example of a solid, make sure you write down the definition of a liquid, okay guys? And raise your hand when you think you have the right answer. I'm gonna look over, okay? Yes, Mia? Just so you know, probably spelled H-A-R-D, okay? But you got it right. So do you want to correct that please and write your name, your group's name on a piece of paper? That one right there, not right there.
Okay.
You know, I came early. I had to make sure I got that ready.
I thought you were starting. I thought you were starting now.
I started at 10:15. Okay. Make sure you write down everyone's name on the table, okay? And I'll collect, okay? So raise your hand when you think you have the definitions and the examples. Stop us with you. We're going to write down the definitions, okay? Oh, she is? Well, you gotta talk around the group, okay? So, kind of, what's your writing? What you said? Okay, so you have to get a solid? So good job. Like I said, it stays in one shape when it's broken and it's still solid. And, okay, so a rock is a solid. Good job. So now you just need to do liquid, okay? Do you know liquid? Okay. What was your example? I'm sorry, I can't do that. You? Okay. So the good job. You guys are done? You gotta do this first. Do the ball from big up. Do you guys have both solid? So give me an example of a solid. Okay, well this is the right definition. Do you have it all down? Is it for you? Is it? Is that alright? A solid is a hard object, for example, a rock. And a liquid is a soft object. Well, water isn't necessarily soft. So like, what was something you said about water? Like, if you get that picture, poured it out, what does it do? If I take like a picture of water, let's say like, this is like a thing of water, and it's full of water, pour it out, what happens? And I pour it out into like a vase or something.
The water's going to be shaped.
Good job. Don't you guys change the definition, but your examples are okay? You guys, did you guys already try to say no? Can I see it? Okay, good job.
Both of them?
You guys good? That's why I have baby wipes and stuff. And also, if you guys got your hands messy during the group, like, raise your hand. I'll give you a little blowout so I can say else. Sorry? So, you guys look at here? Wipe yourself down?
Just don't put it near your face. No, that kind of, I would just use that on your hand. I wouldn't put that near your face.
This one's just right. Make sure you guys don't get this near your face, okay?
That's bleach, you know.
Even not here, you can hear.
Do not put it on your face.
Do not put the long thing.
And when you guys are done with the wipe, raise it up and I'll grab it for you.
Zaire, that's the claw. It's not a body weight. It's just for your hands. Pull it out now.
That's your wipe.
Oh, I need a white one.
The mat. Get it off your bed.
You guys go check.
Thank you very much. You see the wipe?
You guys go check.
Please stay down with the wipe.
Jason. No, no. As a matter of fact, that we give them credit if we're done with them. Oh, yeah, I don't want somebody to take it to the side. Okay, that's fine.
I'll take it.
Sit down.
Pass the baby wipe, please. And I also want you guys to raise up your oobleck bag high in the air. And I want you guys to take all the marbles that you found and put it in the other plastic bag I gave you. So give me the oobleck. Actually, you can only get your hands dirty. I don't mind doing it. I don't go over there. I got you. I'll get you another one. Give me a second. Thank you.
Have a seat. Miss Curtis, have a seat. Mr. Dowdy,
Push up to your face. So now if you have one of those tiny little white canisters that we're holding the water, please raise it up. I should see 6 in the air. 1. Thank you. I want to do this quietly. I'll give it to you in a second. Oh. Do I have all the canisters and all the other supplies like you? I said I want to do this quietly, guys. So do I have everyone's supplies except for the newspapers? Going once, going twice. Oh wait, can I see these plastic baggies, the empty plastic baggies, please? And I want you guys to put these little papers that I gave you that we did together in class in your science notebook.
I'm going to add one correction. I want the names on the science papers. Okay? And I would like Kaya to collect them. I don't want them just put in your science binder for now. This is something I just decided. I want to take a look at them and include that as part of your science group. Excuse me. Look at me right now, Zaire. Not liking the attitude. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can you pull that up? You see him standing there holding that, can you help? Instead of worrying about that? I understand that, and what I'm saying is I'm not liking the attitude. So if it's going to continue to be a problem, we'll do data call. And see if he can help you solve this data. So here, can you help hold that up real nicely? Jade, can you hold that newspaper up nicely, please? If it doesn't have a lot on it, let's see if you can hold it up. You can be helpful. Once your desk has been cleared of newspapers, excuse me, and Rakai, just collect the ones that are up in the air. The ones that you're waiting on, don't wait all day on the spot. Excuse me. I'll wait until I have your eyes, because I'm not going to scream and yell in this heat. I know you're hot, but I need you to sit up and look at me, please. Zaqua. Excuse me. I need for you to stop talking when I'm speaking. Now the direction was, Orion, Zakir, that once everything was cleaned up, everyone is back in their original seat, and you are completing morning work. You have about 15 minutes until lunch. And if I do not have your science papers with your name on it, you need to get them up in the air now so that Rakaya can collect them. What did we say for this wonderful lesson that we had today?
Thank
you. Thank you, Mr. John.
You guys are the best.
I don't know where you're getting that at.
You're going to run by me since the lesson is basically done. I'm going to stay after when they're in lunch.
I have to be at the Tower School at 11:30. So I haven't been there.
Bye-bye.
With a crate or just everything in the bag?
I crammed everything in the bag.
Okay.
So, I'm going to bike back. Getting the grocery store was a fun time.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, I didn't see the whole thing, so I'm
I had
sorry.
2 different angles of video recording.
You know what I'm thinking? I'm not liking how you're not respecting the board. Turn around. Not yet. We'll do it in a minute. I'm not going to worry about it right now.
So,
I mean, turn around and
I
do
heard
that
we're
morning
starting
work.
at 10:40.
And dear, because I also got put up,
Yeah,
what
because
is
it was
that?
on my big chart.
Or what is that?
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is everything on that,
But I have
is
to leave
everything
the
on that
house, like,
secret
oh, this
list
is
done?
great, I'm gonna,
Okay, so
I'll
that's the
leave
Red
5
Riding
minutes
Hood
early,
project,
but
yes. You can work
I got
for
to
it.
see the end of it.
So
I
man,
just
could you
missed the
please
beginning.
get rid of
But
whatever's
was
in
it
your
like
mouth
when I
and shut
said
the
this?
box?
I changed it up a little bit. Like, I would have you saw that chart where it was like, oh, let's talk about the properties of solid and we could read the definitions at the end. But I wanted them thinking about like solid electric.
Zaqua, you're going to have to stand.
Yeah,
I'm
Kasha?
telling you, last time.
Do you have a question?
Turn around.
She's okay. When I cook the grape, did they mix it in the bag and have it work?
They looked through the bags. Like, basically, I went out and I bought like little plastic bags from CVS and I showed the cornstarch already in there. And then like, they basically just poured the water in and I let them mix it with their hands and they had so
Why
much
are you
stuff.
still sitting?
Did they stick their finger in it?
Get out
Were they
to work
surprised?
now.
Yeah, they were kind of like weirded out. Like, not all of them did it, 'cause, like,
Let's stop.
if they did this, it'd be a lot more of a mess. And it's a little bit of a mess.
You might want
The
to
teacher
sit
didn't want them like all put in the bag.
Because I told him 3 times to get out of work, he's just sitting there, he
They
still
liked it, but you want
has
to
supplies that belong to him. Because he doesn't listen.
So it's good. So, no, I have great comments. You will get a write-up from me either tonight or tomorrow. At the latest tomorrow night.
It's better than nothing.
I know. But the only thing
Where's your work at, Kwame? Get something out now.
Unless it's what she does all the time. Because using the same phrase over and over.
I guess maybe I need to contact her.
Use the same phrase. So easy. Good job, good job, good job.
No, not I was getting there. Get it out.
I like your ideas.
I don't see you doing what I asked, so that's not happening.
And I have
I need that marble right now. Let's go. See, this is the problem I'm having. That's a problem. Where's your morning work? Excuse me? So I guess you're doing lunch at 2:55 this afternoon. You're going to spend up here sitting with me.
so consistently
Thank you. Journal.
I don't hear you.
Think about your favorite scene
Which
and
is
describe
great
it.
to say.
From Red Riding
But
Hood?
they say that all the time.
Yes.
Some of them will zone out. But they say, I need everything.
Behind and then have your dad.
Or you can say, talk to your partner. Talk to your partner.
You want to get a 42, man?
When I call you,
Sorry. I'm being at the turn.
that's okay.
We're a rough crowd in here today.
I think you're good.
Did you take off one of the, did you take off the back sheet?
Yeah, I took the pink one.
Okay.
So I
Thanks
figured
so
that.
much. I'm sorry I'm late. I thought it was starting to get done.
Oh, that's all right. And I'm sorry, the conditions in here are ridiculous. By afternoon, we're like
I have 4
melting.
schools today, and
Oh.
this is my second school.
We're melting.
And one is just hotter than the other.
Yeah, every time it's just
Everybody
gonna
has
let us.
fans going.
Right, and
Yeah.
I got 1.5 windows that open out of 8. I wish you would take yourself to a seat.
30 years in school just because maybe your cousins do it.
I have this reaction to like take my shoe off and prop you with. I'm serious. Like, I feel like your mother today. You fell asleep on me on the ballet. Can you get out your morning work? Come on.
Can we do the play?
We can do the play if you would get quiet. If y'all would do what I asked you to do.
Quiet.
You think that's quiet? I don't think it's quiet.
They flipping papers and doing their work.
And what are you doing?
I'm about to pull out my.
I'm about to. 8 minutes after the fact. I'm about to. Okay, we have time for a quick run through. So, Tasha, get up there and read your part, please, at the very beginning. Read it fast. No, don't read it fast. Be quiet.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
I'm just surprised if it's going to, we might have to turn them off, because there's no reason to record right now.
No.